Here we are in these big bad woods.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking away.
Sure. Exactly what we're doing.
What was that? When you get the episode next week, you'll be pissed that you did it like that.
Warning. The topics discussed on this podcast are subject to adult themes and languages. We seek to unravel the unexplained and unknown. This is Encounters.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Encounters. My name's Dakota,
I'm Amanda.
and today we are talking about
Werewolves! Awoo!
lichens, werewolves,
Lichens.
shapeshifters, your unfriendly neighborhood dogman. Actually, it's unfair to classify this as a dogman because dogmen are their own specific breed and are separate from werewolf culture. Did you know that?
No, because I definitely didn't look up anything about dogs.
Fair point.
No. Everybody got a club, see? Everybody got a club.
Team Jacob.
Jesus.
Everybody's got a club. Yes, today we are talking about werewolf lore. Amanda, where does the werewolf sit with you?
Like, in the terms of,
Well, I know we both...
I hate them.
Yeah. Like, I know we both express previous childhood traumas that involved, a Santa Claus werewolf, in your case.
Oh my god, I'm so scared of... I still, to this day, really don't watch werewolf movies.
I'm
I don't
telling
like
you,
them.
you've got to watch Cursed.
I know.
You've got to do it.
I want to. You made it sound fun.
It is fun. For me, I love all werewolf movies. I'm actually a really big Team Werewolf. It wasn't until True Blood that I actually switched over to Team Vampire. But even through True Blood, I was Team Joe Manganiello. I don't even give a shit about the werewolves. I just wanted Joe Manganiello. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Now I know what you mean.
Alicide!
I don't know what that means.
That is his werewolf name.
Okay, damn.
I'm sorry. I'm very defensive of the True Blood lore.
Okay. I saw the first season. Yay. Next.
Most people can trace their knowledge of werewolves back to a very, very crafty story that Amanda and I didn't even think of as werewolf lore.
Yeah.
Completely out of nowhere. And then sitting back, imagining it today, I was like, well, what the fuck else could it be?
I know.
And that would be the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Think about it. It's a wolf that talks, impersonates a grandmother, eats a grandmother, homicide. So one, yeah.
Right?
Human flesh, yum. And then eats Little Red Riding Hood, so yay, yum.
And then some big masculine hunky huntsman comes through. I don't know if he's hunky. Just in my mind he is.
Just always in
Sorry.
your mind. He better be good looking if he's gonna come rip me out of a wolf's stomach.
I know, right? I don't know.
God forbid he be ugly. I'd rather stay
That's
put.
horrible.
I
Right?
could just see you. Like they open up the wolf, you're like, nah, I'm gonna wait for the next guy. It's okay.
Yeah, like, just the next guy.
Don't
Thank
no
you.
no. Tell them I'm still in here. Go on. I'll sew it
Right,
back.
Thank you, but... no
Shallow
thank you.
bitch.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to say all that. But yes, a guy comes and cuts you out. And it was because they were terrified of werewolves.
It was because they were terrified of wolves in general.
Yes.
The whole concept behind it fell to the idea of what's the strongest predator in the area. And where we see the largest amount of werewolf lore is in Central and Eastern Europe, though it does travel all throughout Europe as a whole state. Even going into Iceland and...
the lore of werewolves end up just reaching everywhere around the world. Like, this thing goes back, and it goes back far.
But it stems from the greatest apex predator that was roaming the area of the time, which was the wolf. So naturally, mankind said, there's got to be some other things that happen with this wolf. And that's where we start our timetable. we jump all the way back to one of the first recorded texts in the world with the Epic of Gilgamesh. Amanda, what happens in the epic?
Well, he mentions that Gilgamesh has a jilted potential lover, and it's because she turned her ex into a wolf. So and pretty much in the first recorded text, you get someone turning into a wolf.
But we also have recordings of werewolves in Greek mythology. In fact, there's a myth where Zeus visits King Lycan. So, King Lycan is the king of Arcadia, and nobody can really tell me who his parents are. Like, he's got 4 different parents in this goddamn myth. One of them being Dionysus, one of them being Pegulus, and then a whole bunch of different women being his mom. But what you need to know is that he is the king of Arcadia, and he is very, very mean. He's very cutthroat, very ruthless, and in Greek culture, like in Greek mythology, he's known as a barbarian who defied the gods. The story goes, Lycan was so terrible that Zeus caught word of it and was like, this motherfucker thinks he's bad? Okay, I gotta go down to Earth. I gotta find him. I'm gonna have dinner with him. I'm gonna tell him I'm coming. And Lycan was like, oh, this is bullshit. No, I'm gonna test to see if this is actually the omnipresent god Zeus. And so he invites the god in, sits him down, and at a dinner table with his 50 sons, he serves him a dish made of human flesh. It's said to be a child that Lycan murdered and served to the god. And Zeus was like, what the fuck is this? I come here in this nice house and you feed me human? Fuck you. And turned Lycan into a wolf, and all of his sons died except for the youngest one. And then in other myths, it said that only the youngest one died, but everyone else turned into wolves. So I don't really know what happened, but that's one of the first encapsulations of the werewolf in Greek mythology.
So this is probably one of the oldest legends of a human monster recorded in history. It goes back to these books that are kind of the first recorded history, right?
Exactly.
Like the first stories.
I mean, even Ovid writes of the Nereians in the 5th century BCE. They speak of a people that can change into wolves, or any animal really, at one point in a year, and they do it for like 5 days, and then they're good for the rest of the year. It's in recorded texts that we see creatures that are shapeshifters, if you will.
Yes, and shapeshifting is really big at this time. A lot of people were thinking others were shapeshifting into a lot of different animals.
And specifically what you see rising in the culture is the assimilation of the moon to these creatures. In fact, it was thought that many of the people that you would find who were werewolves that are unshifted are lunatics, aka suffering from lunacy, or Luna being from the moon. And you know, that ain't bad. Like, I notice when a full moon happens, people get crazy as shit and mean as hell.
Right? There was a study done in Australia at the Calvary Master Newcastle Hospital that said that during the full moon, it would bring out the beast in people. And they found out of the 91 violent behaviors, 23% of these happened during the full moon. And that was like, and they said people would display like wolf-like behaviors.
Aggressive alpha male syndrome. Or alpha female.
Right. But yeah, so the full moon already just kind of brings out a craziness in people. And at this time, they were thinking that it kind of brought out the wolf as well.
Well, and we're also in a time before electricity. So, like, nighttime is especially scary. People are afraid of the dark now. Imagine the Dark Ages.
Right? Oh my God. I sleep with the light on every night. I couldn't do it.
Unless you can make fire, you ain't got light.
Exactly.
But shape-shifting humanoids have been around for centuries, for millennia. You could even go back to cave paintings where you see creatures shifting from human to, like, stag. And it's different everywhere you go. In Lapland, do you know where Lapland is, Amanda?
No.
So in Lapland, which is in Finland, they have reindeer.
Yes.
Like, people shift into reindeer.
Which is not surprising because that, like, it's probably the scariest animal ever when you think about it. These giant horns coming at you. It's intimidating.
And then in South America, we get were-opossums.
Possums are kind of scary too.
But they're not the same. Like, opossums and possums aren't the same thing.
Oh, are they not? What is an opossum?
It's a little more evolved looking. Looks more like a lemur.
So this whole time, I really thought they were scared of possums. And I was like, oh, wow.
Someone, like, shifts into a possum. It hangs upside down.
But I was like, these people are crazy. I've been thinking this the whole entire day. I feel so dead. Anyway, my favorite is Japan.
Japan, is it Japan or China?
I got Japan, but it could be China. It could be both.
In parts of China and Japan, we see the emergence of wildcats.
I just think of Zac Efron.
Zac Efron?
Yeah.
Oh, High School Musical.
I'm sorry for that laugh.
But my favorite comes from the Scandinavian lore, which I can't really say is my favorite. I mean, the most intriguing to me is definitely the Berserkers with the Vikings.
Yes.
Which, it's a different take on the idea of a werewolf. The Berserkers were a military group within the Vikings. And Berserker means literally bear skin shirt. And these big burly Vikings would put on these bear skins and get drunk and violent and believe that they were taking on the spirit of the bear and then go fuck shit up. Pillage, take whatever they want, and go crazy. But this is another concept of literally taking on the spirit of the animal through the skin you're wearing. And where have we heard that before?
Right. I mean, skinwalkers, I don't know, I'm just moving my hand back and forth.
I mean, that's the thing. Skinwalkers. Like, think back to when we were telling you the story about the wolves next to the motorcycle in pants smoking cigarettes. Skinwalker Ranch.
Definitely.
Giant dire wolves running around the ranch property. These things have been around since before anyone knew what the fuck there was. And when you read these books, like Amanda, today I was reading the Book of Werewolves by Sabine Baring Gould, which was published in 1865. And it speaks of werewolves like dinosaurs. Like, they're talking about discovering fossils, and they're like, we're looking for a specimen of the werewolf.
Oh, so they're looking for them.
Right.
But it's interesting because in a lot of the I cannot speak English. Folklore, when you get killed as a werewolf, you turn back into a human.
Yes. There's actually a very famous story of a she-wolf in France.
Oh, yes.
Where a man was walking through a forest and was attacked by a wolf. And in retribution, he cut the wolf's paw off. And the wolf fled. And he put the paw in his fucking bag and he, like, went on to the castle, whatever. And he showed up at the king's castle. And the king was like, hey man, what took you so long? And he was like, I got attacked by a werewolf. And look, I have a paw. And he pulled out the paw and it was actually a female hand with a gold band on the finger. The king was like, I recognize that ring. That's my wife's ring. And he ran up to his wife's room and she was like bandaging up her arm and was missing a hand. And he was like, oh my god. So they burned her at the stake.
See, I had a story too, where this man was going to see his mistress one night, and he took his soldier friend with him, and they were walking by the full moon when the soldier just ripped off his clothes and turns into a wolf. So the man made his way to his mistress's house, where he met another guy. I don't remember what the other guy was doing there, but he said that he had stabbed a wolf in its neck. And the next morning, when the guy went to the soldier's barracks, there was a soldier with a stab wound in his neck.
Yeah, it's his friend.
Yes!
And they say, like, whenever his friend, like, got naked and ran off as the wolf, the clothes turned to stone.
Oh, really?
And when
I didn't know about
back
that.
after, like, the wolf had gone, the clothes had turned to blood.
Yeah, that shit is crazy.
And this is what happens when the Dark Ages fully roll through. And Christianity takes over and starts creating the werewolf hunt, the witch hunts, the Inquisition, the purging of anything not Catholic.
Yes, they went crazy. I think in France alone, during this period, 30,000 people were on trial for being werewolves.
No, over 30,000 people were murdered.
Exactly. Like, they did anything and everything. If they thought you were a witch / a werewolf or both, they went after you with a full vengeance. So during these werewolf trials, people were hunted, questioned, and then executed for being pretty much accused of being a werewolf. Because if anyone accused of you of being a witch or a werewolf, they would pretty much torture you until you confess.
Yeah. And concept of being a werewolf wasn't necessarily tied to any murders going on or any missing children. A lot of the times, the profile for a werewolf was someone who is unkempt, someone who is hairy, someone who had rough palms, because it was said that they had hair on their palms, but they shaved it so that they looked human. But a rough palm meant a werewolf.
And a unibrow. So if you had those traits, then people would accuse you of being a werewolf. And this happened to a lot of the poor, the peasants. This is who they were going after.
Yeah, it was a lot of peasant on peasant crime, really.
Yes.
I don't like you or your beliefs, so die.
Right? Anyone who was...
I
was going to say, anyone who wasn't Catholic at the time was for sure just not going to make it. People believed that werewolves were connected to the devil. That's what it was. People believed that it was either a punishment from God that you were turned into a werewolf, or that you made a pact with the devil and the devil gave you some magic, something like either a belt or a pelt a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And they would give you the power of the wolf.
Yeah. And we start to see some folklore and names attached to this folklore that come to us out of this culture. Specifically in 1521, Pierre Burgot and Michael Verdun. Yeah, they were child murderers, and they were tortured into confessing that they renounced God and swore to serve the devil. And in doing so, he gave them this ointment that would allow them to turn themselves into wolves.
Yes.
They ultimately admitted to killing 2 boys and 2 girls, I believe. Well, anyways, they were caught and captured and burned at the stake. Another one we can see is Peter Stube.
Yeah, that guy. Oh my gosh, guys. This guy. He is a piece of work. So, it was a German man named Peter Stube. And it was said that he was caught by his neighbors in his wolf form. And they actually witnessed him taking off his wolf garb and turning back into a human when they caught him. But they swear they saw a wolf. And then when they got him, it was a man. And he confessed to killing at least, warning, it's a little graphic, but he confessed to killing 13 children, and it was said that he would strangle or bludgeon the children and rip out their throats with his bare hands, and then sometimes eat parts of them. He was also convicted of killing 2 pregnant women, and he ripped out, I don't know if I should say that. And he was also accused of killing his own son and eating his brain right before he got captured. And then after he was captured, he was executed for being a werewolf, and so was his mistress and his daughter. And the reason they were executed is because they knew of his crimes and had sex with him. So his daughter was executed for being raped by her father.
Yeah.
And that's Peter.
Oh, God.
Was that too much?
That's a lot.
I'm telling you, that wasn't even half of it.
Oh.
I cut it down. That wasn't even the half of
The
it.
next werewolf I'd like to talk about is Giles Garner, who was known as the Werewolf of Dole or the Hermit of St. Bonnet. And Giles was a peasant farmer. He wasn't very... he didn't have a lot of ways to provide. I guess he was really socially awkward. And he had recently married this woman and moved out into a reclusive part of town. And during this time, a whole bunch of children started going missing. And the people of the town said that it had to be a werewolf responsible for killing everyone. And so the village gets together and starts going out with torches trying to find this thing. And one of the group finds a wolf over the body of a dead child, and they look at it and they see like this wolf is basically Giles. Like they see him in this wolf somehow. And one of the factors in werewolf lore is that they may be able to shift, they may be able to change, or they may be able to disguise themselves as a wolf, but the eyes are the dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Well, they arrested him and tortured him, and he confessed that a specter appeared to him and offered him the ability to hunt better, would be to become this wolf. And once he became the wolf, he couldn't control the bloodlust and started eating children.
Yeah.
And so he killed a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and then a 10-year-old boy and another 10-year-old boy, and he tried to strangle a girl. Oh no, he did strangle a girl in 1573. He ate her flesh and tore her left leg off, and then he took it to his wife for food.
And that's one thing that's kind of consistent with these killers, is that they're so violent, and often they would rip people apart and
yeah, that's
cannibalize
one of
people.
That's one of the crazy tie-overs, because we think, oh, if I get bit by a werewolf, that's how I'm a werewolf, and it's like, okay, but werewolf culture shows that they don't really leave behind anything. But Garner was also burned at the stake. He was charged with the act of crimes of lycanthropy and witchcraft, and was burned at the stake in 1573.
Yeah. And the reason all of these people were burned at the stake is because they believed burning killed werewolves. So before the silver bullet craze, it was burning.
So let's talk about what science has brought to us about what the idea of a werewolf is. We've kind of given you the background, the concept of where we've seen it in history, but let's see what science has given us. So we know at the time, a lot of creatures could have suffered from rabies, which is an infection.
Yeah, you go crazy. You like
Start foaming at the mouth, and it's usually animal to human transmission. But humans can transmit it to other humans through biting if you were to break the skin. But ultimately, it shuts down your brain and you die. A lot of people were apparently suffering from that at that time. We've also had medical proof congenital hypertrichosis terminalis, which is excessive hair growth all over your body.
Yeah.
These would be the people that most often in sideshows would be referred to as the Wolf Boys. The story of Beauty and the Beast descends from an actual story of a prince who had this disorder, and he was kind of treated like a pet by royalty. Yeah. And they had to find him a wife and everything. There's a whole big, long backstory to it. He didn't capture her and have stinging plates, though.
I'm sure it did not. I wish it did. That would be some crazy shit. They were probably on this acid.
Right. But in the study that was done for the disorder, they found, or syndrome, it's actually a syndrome. It's known as the werewolf syndrome. In 1984, they started this study, and they found that they figured it was a mutated X chromosome, but they didn't realize until 2011, or I guess confirm in 2011, that it was actually an overexpressed X chromosome. Instead of being like a weird X chromosome, it's just an X chromosome that's working extremely hard at growing body hair.
Oh, so it's overgrown.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Oh, poor things.
Yeah.
So it's like a mutation of something.
Yeah. And you also have the psychology disorder of lycanthropy, not to be confused with what the church was charging people with.
Yeah.
The mental lycanthropy is more of a delusional misidentification syndrome, which is not being able to identify that you are not an animal. It's what the berserkers were actually intending to do. It's associating yourself with that animal to take on the spirit of that animal so that you can have the veracity of that animal. And what psychological lycanthropy suggests is that you're trying to be a werewolf, thus you see yourself as one.
And a lot of times back then they came up with things like werewolves to explain shit they could not explain.
Right.
At the time. Because they didn't know what mental health was. They didn't know what, like,
congenital hypertrichosis terminalis was.
It was just something's different. Obviously, it's of the devil. It's Satan. It's gross. Like, not gross. Well, to them, it was gross. And that's why, like, people who did those horrible crimes were considered werewolves, because they couldn't understand how a human could do something like that.
I mean, we see it today, or not today, but we've seen it in the last 200 years even. I mean, we've had werewolf serial killers before that are still cannibals, that are still killing children, that are eating them. Yeah. In our last Warren's case file, when we went to the Occult Museum, we learned about the werewolf man. Yeah. Like, werewolf serial killers haven't left. I mean, people would call Jeffrey Dahmer a werewolf if he said, I turn into a werewolf and kill these gay boys. They'd be like, he's a fucking werewolf. I don't care. Kill him.
Exactly.
Shoot him with a silver bullet. I don't care. Shoot him with whatever. Just kill it.
Whatever it takes. Yeah. But they did also have... What were you going to say?
Well, I just think it's really interesting because we've mentioned Skinwalker, but what about Wendigo?
Exactly.
That's all about eating human flesh and the consumption behind it. So what if the Wendigo psychosis meets the disillusioned misidentification syndrome? You just got the fucking beast from Split.
Yeah. Right? And how would you explain, like, if you saw that running at you, you would probably call it, I would be, yes, that's a monster.
That's a fucking werewolf.
What do you mean? Right?
That looks terrifying. Like Lupin.
It's kind of interesting because back in the day, werewolves could change whenever they wanted.
Yeah, they were shapeshifters.
Yes. And it's only in kind of like recent pop culture that the moonlight thing is a real staple.
Right.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay.
Just like with skinwalkers, they do have ways to kind of reverse the werewolf curse.
Usually it's death.
Yes, burning at the stake, purifying. But the Danish had scalding, and I don't know if that means like burning somebody or like yelling at them.
I'm pretty sure it means burning someone with hot water.
Okay, that's.
I don't think it's get out, Mr. Werewolf. Get out now.
I did kind of imagine that though. I'm not gonna lie.
The Danish are such nice people. It probably is that.
Right?
You need to get out now.
Right? Please and thank you. The German way was to call them by their Christian names 3 times in a row. Some also believed that if you hit them in the forehead or the scalp with a knife, that would work. They also believed piercing their hands with nails would turn them back into a human. And they also believed in wolfsbane, but that is fatal to humans, so it would kill anybody who wasn't human. And it would kill anybody who was human.
Oh, the things people have done to other people because they didn't like them.
No, of course the shit would turn me human. I would be dead. 4 out of the 3 kill you.
Oh, you want me to eat poison to see if it kills me? Okay.
Oh,
great.
You want me to tie a rock to my feet and then throw me to a river and see if I don't float?
You want to yell the werewolf out of me? I don't think so. I don't have to take this. But the real werewolf lore comes from movies.
And books.
All of the stuff that you know about werewolves really boils down to what we've seen on film and what we've read in books. Here in the more modern turn of the century. The more archaic werewolf is a giant wolf. What we see now is turning by the full moon. Can't be silver is the devil to it. It almost loses its Christian impact too in the later turn of the century. It's more of just a curse.
Yeah, not put on you by God. It's just you got bit.
Yeah, and then the biting and spreading of the curse. Which is why a lot of people tie the werewolf curse to rabies. But you get the wonderful movies like The Wolfman, which revolutionized werewolf culture. But preceding that, there's also The Werewolf of London. And then you get to the movies that I know, which are An American Werewolf in Paris and American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, and actually in 1913, the first werewolf movie came out. It was called Werewolf, but they've lost all footage of it. So it's considered a lost film.
Oh shit, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
It was lost to me. It's in my restricted section.
Alright. But yeah, you're right. 1941's Wolfman really gave us pretty much everything we know.
Well, and the writing in it is so beautiful. The guy that wrote some of the lines there. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. It gives us the gypsy curse. It solidifies the allergy to silver. And it brings to us the very first on-screen transformation.
Yes.
And who does he look like? He looks like someone who suffers from congenital hypertrichosis terminalis.
But it did change the way people viewed werewolves.
It did. And, they were talking on the documentary I was watching. They were talking about how in World War II they were trying not to release any of the horror movies because they were like, oh, it's such a bad time right now. We don't want to have this stuff. And they ultimately realized that they had to start making all of these movies. And that's when Wolfman made its emergence at the later part of the war. And people needed an expression. They needed to be scared. They needed to get out whatever emotions that they were having because they were constantly in fear that another bombing was going to happen or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from there, it just fucking spring rolls all the way down. You get Cursed. You get Underworld Trilogy. Rise of the Lycans. And
You get The Howling. You get
Twilight.
freaking. Well, these are a little. You get Teen Wolf.
You get Teen Wolf.
The movie and the TV show. But it's interesting because werewolves actually didn't take off kind of like vampires did, you know, where that's like, because vampires are so sexy. Werewolves didn't get that kind of love.
Well, they're more related to like the scruffy, undesirable, hermity person that you just don't want around, which is why there were so many of them accused, because it was like, oh, we've got this homeless person that we don't want. Kill it. It's a werewolf. It's a stray.
Yeah.
Put it down.
But that was pretty much what they did.
It was exactly what they did. It's exactly what they did to witches, too. Oh, she's uppity and I don't like her shoes. Burn her.
Yes.
And that's werewolves. Are you good? Do you have anything else you want to say, Amanda?
I think that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, that is about
everything.
it. It's an overview. It's a historical glance. It's not...
Yes.
It's...
We didn't go into any story. Well, we did go into kind of stories, but we didn't go into modern day. There are still modern day werewolves.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
I don't know anything about it. I didn't look into it. But people to this day still say they're werewolves. So we just kind of scratched the surface.
You hear that? That's us scratching. Let us in, werewolves. Tell us your secrets.
Please don't. I'm good.
I mean, I feel like that's the least terrifying thing we've talked about.
Really? Giant wolf creatures?
True.
I think they're all terrifying.
Join us next week when we take on the possession story of Annalise Michel, otherwise the exorcism story of Emily Rose. Ooh, that's gonna be hard. Okay, well, that's gonna be fun. Well, not fun. It's gonna be horrible,
Maybe.
but
It's going to be
we're
interesting.
gonna give you all the demonic influence you want. If you like what you hear, please find us on Facebook at Encounters a Paranormal Experience. You can also find us on Instagram at Encounters a Paranormal. We are also on YouTube and Tumblr. Our Tumblr is Encounters a Paranormal EXP.
I love that.
Please consider leaving a rating and review on iTunes. And until next week, I'm Dakota.
I'm Amanda.
Stay spooky.